Imagine the sound of a city breaking, not all at once, but in 1,000 terrible moments. The clash of swords against shields, the crack of burning timber as ancient homes turn to ash, the shattering of gates, the cries of a people watching everything they've ever known collapse before their eyes, the air thick with dust and despair. Jerusalem, the holy city of God, the heart of the promise, was falling. The Babylonian army swept through its streets like a flood of iron and fire. They were a storm of vengeance, a force of nature unleashed. The temple, once the heart of their worship, stood desecrated. Its sacred courts echoed with the shouts of foreign soldiers. The golden vessels, meant only for the worship of the Almighty, were stolen as trophies of war. The sacred places, where generations had sought the face of God, were trampled beneath foreign boots. But this wasn't the triumph of Babylon, it was the judgment of God. For generations, His people had turned their hearts away. They had chased after shadows, bowed to false gods of wood and stone that could not hear or save. They had defiled the covenant, treating grace as a license and mercy as a weakness. They had hardened their necks against the prophet's warnings. And so the Lord, in His terrible justice, handed them over, not to destroy them, but to awaken them, not to annihilate them, but to purify them in the fire of exile. Among the exiles marched 4 young men, barely more than boys, with the dust of their ruined homes still on their clothes. Their names, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. They were the best of the best, the flower of Judah's nobility, noble by birth, sharp of mind, strong in body, wise beyond their years. They were the future of their nation, now led in chains to serve their conquerors. But Babylon sought to erase that, to reshape them, to break their spirit and remold their minds, to make them forget who they were and whose they were. The empire stripped them of their names, a calculated act of spiritual warfare. Daniel, God is my judge, became Belteshazzar. Hananiah, the Lord is gracious, became Shadrach. Mishael and Azariah were renamed Meshach and Abednego. Each new name was an invocation of a Babylonian deity, a daily reminder of who was now in charge. But names are just sounds. A label can be imposed, but identity must be surrendered. What matters is who you truly serve. They were chosen for the king's personal service, to be trained for 3 years in the language, literature, and complex customs of the Babylonians, to stand before King Nebuchadnezzar himself, to be molded into polished servants of a foreign god and a foreign empire. But deep in their hearts, they carried something Babylon could never take, a treasure it could never understand. Loyalty to the God of heaven. The first test came quietly, not on a battlefield, but at a dinner table. The king's rich food was set before them, the finest meats, the most decadent wines, delicacies carefully prepared and offered first to idols. It was food designed to impress, to indulge, to assimilate. To partake was to compromise, to blur the line between the holy and the profane. It was a small step of conformity that would lead to 1,000 more. To remain pure meant standing apart, inviting suspicion, risking everything. Daniel spoke, with courage rooted in conviction, with humility born of true strength. He did not make a defiant scene. He made a respectful request to the official in charge. He requested a simple diet, vegetables and water. Test us, he said, for 10 days. See if we grow weak. Judge for yourself. It was a proposal of faith, placing the outcome entirely in God's hands. It was a small stand in the eyes of men, a trivial matter of diet, but in the eyes of heaven, it was everything. 10 days passed, a period of quiet obedience in the heart of a glittering pagan world. While others indulged, Daniel and his friends remained faithful, and when the time came, they were brought before the official. They stood stronger, healthier, their faces clearer, and their minds sharper than any of the young men who ate from the king's table. Because faith doesn't weaken you, it strengthens you. Obedience isn't a loss of freedom, it is the source of it. Reflective, the world may offer its treasures, its pleasures, its fleeting security, but true power comes from obedience to the one who made the world. God's favor rested upon them. It was visible, undeniable. He gave them knowledge, skill in all literature, and profound wisdom. And to Daniel alone, He gave a unique gift, the ability to understand and interpret dreams and visions of all kinds. A rare gift, a dangerous gift, one that would shape the destiny of kingdoms. In the shadows of Babylon's splendor, 4 young men kept the flame of faith alive. They were captives in a foreign land, their future uncertain, their home a memory. But they knew this truth, and it became their anchor. A faithful heart cannot be conquered, and this was only the beginning. In the heart of Babylon, beneath walls that touched the sky, one man's dream would shake the empires of the earth. King Nebuchadnezzar, ruler of the greatest kingdom of his age, a man whose will was law, was tormented. A vision, terrifying and strange, invaded his sleep. It slipped through the guards at his door and the power of his throne, leaving him shaken and afraid. The images faded upon waking, but the dread remained. A cold weight in his soul, a mystery so profound, it stripped the mightiest man in the world of peace. The king's counselors, the magicians, astrologers, sorcerers, and Chaldeans were summoned. They entered the throne room, a collection of the world's finest minds, masters of ancient and secret knowledge. They stood powerless. Nebuchadnezzar demanded not just the meaning of the dream, but the dream itself, a test no mortal could pass. "Tell me what I saw," he ordered, his voice laced with suspicion and fear, "or you will be torn limb from limb, and your houses turned into rubble. But if you tell me the dream and its meaning, you will receive riches and honor." None could answer. None could even begin. Their wisdom had reached its limit. The order was given, born of royal fury and fear. "Kill them all, every wise man in Babylon." Condemned, the executioners were sent out, and among them sought for execution Daniel. But Daniel did not panic. When the captain of the guard, Arioch, came for him, he responded with wisdom and tact, not fear. He sought not the wisdom of men, which had failed so spectacularly, but the mercy of God. He went to his friends, to his brothers in faith, with his friends by his side, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah. They prayed. They didn't just ask, they cried out to the one who sees all, the God who reveals secrets, pleading for their lives and for the life of every wise man in the city. And in the stillness of the night, when all human effort had ceased, the answer came. The mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision. Daniel beheld the king's dream, clear as crystal, a colossal statue, mighty and radiant, fearful in its appearance, its head of pure gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, and its feet, a fragile, brittle mixture of iron and clay. And then, a stone, not quarried by men, not shaped by tools, uncut by human hands. It struck the statue on its fragile feet of iron and clay, and shattered it to dust. And the gold, silver, bronze, iron, and clay became like chaff on a summer threshing floor, swept away by the wind without a trace. And the stone that struck the statue grew, becoming a great mountain that filled the whole earth. A dream not just for a king, but for the ages. A prophecy of the rise and fall of all human power. Daniel stood before Nebuchadnezzar, bold yet humble. He made it clear from the beginning. No wise man, no enchanter, no magician or astrologer can reveal this mystery to the king. But there is a God in heaven who reveals secrets, and he has shown King Nebuchadnezzar what will be in the latter days. He spoke of kingdoms that would rise and fall, each one replacing the last. Babylon, the golden head, glorious but fleeting, would not last forever. Empires of silver, bronze, and iron would follow, each one a different form of human power, conquest, and glory. But in the end, after all the empires of man had their moment, God himself would establish a kingdom that would never be destroyed, that would never be left to another people. It would crush all those kingdoms and bring them to an end, but it would itself endure forever. Nebuchadnezzar listened, his face a mixture of awe and fear. The dream was true, the details were perfect, the interpretation undeniable. The very secrets of his soul had been laid bare by this young exile, a mighty king, the conqueror of nations. The man who called himself a god fell on his face before Daniel. The ruler of the earth bowed before a young exile, honoring the God of Israel. And Daniel, once a captive facing death, was lifted up, made ruler over the entire province of Babylon, chief over all the wise men. And at his request, his friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, were elevated with him, placed in high positions of authority, because those who kneel before God will one day stand before kings. But beneath the surface of this newfound glory, another truth stirred. The kingdoms of this world, the gold, the silver, the bronze, the iron, no matter how powerful, would all pass away. They were all part of the statue, destined to become dust. Only one kingdom would remain, and the stone not cut by human hands was already on its way. In the golden heart of Babylon, the seeds of pride, watered by absolute power, grew wild. Nebuchadnezzar, forgetting the God who had revealed the dream, became drunk on his own power and glory. He set up an image, 90 feet tall and 9 feet wide, shining with gold, an idol not of a god, but of his own imperial might, a monument to himself, a symbol not just of empire, but of worship, a demand for absolute allegiance. And he issued a decree, proclaimed to all peoples, nations, and languages, when the music sounds, the horn, the flute, the lyre, the zither, all must bow down and worship the image. Whoever refuses will be thrown immediately into the blazing furnace. The sound of horns and lyres filled the air across the vast plain of Dura, a symphony of forced worship. Across the plain, a sea of humanity knelt. Governors, satraps, officials, and common people, thousands knelt as one, a testament to the king's power. But 3 young men remained standing, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. They would not bend the knee. They would not betray the God who had never betrayed them. They stood as living pillars of faith in a field of fear. Word reached the king. Certain jealous officials, eager to curry favor, reported the defiance of the Jews. Nebuchadnezzar, furious beyond measure, summoned them. His face was a mask of rage. His voice thundered, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the golden image I have set up? I will give you one more chance. When the music plays, if you bow, very well. But if you do not, you will be thrown into the furnace, and what God will be able to rescue you from my hand? Bow or burn." But they answered with calm defiance, their voices steady in the face of the king's fury. "O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your hand, O king. But even if he does not, we want you to know, O king, that we will not serve your gods, nor worship the image you have set up." The king's face twisted with rage. Their calm faith was an insult to his absolute power. The furnace was heated 7 times hotter than usual. The flames leapt, roaring like living beasts, the heat so intense it shimmered in the air. The 3 were bound, their hands and feet tied tight, and thrown into the fire. The heat was so overwhelming it killed the elite soldiers who cast them in. But in the heart of the fire, they stood unburned. Their bonds, the only things consumed by the flames, fell away, and with them walked a fourth, a figure radiant and otherworldly, moving with grace amidst the flames that should have meant instant death. One whose appearance was like a son of the gods. Nebuchadnezzar, watching from a safe distance, leaped to his feet in astonishment. His voice trembled as he spoke to his counselors. "Did we not cast 3 men bound into the fire?" "True, O king," they replied. "But I see 4 men," he cried, "walking around in the fire, unbound and unharmed, and the 4th is like the Son of God." The 3 men emerged, untouched by the flame. Their hair was not singed, their clothes were not scorched or discolored. Not even the smell of smoke clung to them. They walked out of the furnace as if from a pleasant stroll. The king's heart, once proud and unyielding, was shaken to its core. He declared for all to hear, "Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who sent his angel and delivered his servants who trusted in him. They defied the king's command and were willing to give up their lives rather than serve or worship any god except their own God. There is no other God who can save in this way." And once again, the faithful were lifted high, promoted to even greater honor in the province of Babylon, because the God who walks through fire walks with his people still. But this was not the end of Babylon's pride, nor the last test of faith. Greater visions, greater trials still lay ahead. Time passed, and the king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, grew great in power, unmatched in glory. His empire stretched far and wide. His armies were invincible. His palaces gleamed with the wealth of a conquered world, and his word was law. He walked through the hanging gardens, a wonder of the world built by his command, and surveyed his magnificent city. But in his heart, pride swelled like a rising tide, drowning out the memory of the God who had granted him this success. He looked upon the works of his hands and declared, his voice full of arrogant self-admiration, "Is not this the great Babylon I have built as a royal residence, by my mighty power and for the glory of my majesty?" But heaven watches, heaven listens, and pride before long meets judgment. One night, the king dreamed again, this time of a towering tree in the middle of the land. Its branches reached to the heavens, its fruit fed the nations, its leaves sheltered every living thing. It was a symbol of his own benevolent, mighty rule. But then, a holy watcher, a messenger, descended from heaven. The command thundered, "Cut down the tree, and chop off its branches, strip its leaves, and scatter its fruit, but leave the stump and its roots in the ground, bound with a band of iron and bronze. Let him be drenched with the dew of heaven, and let his mind be changed from that of a man to that of a beast, for 7 periods of time." Daniel, now trusted as the king's chief counselor and friend, heard the dream and trembled. For an hour he was silent, his thoughts troubled. With sorrow, knowing the weight of his words, he spoke, "My lord, if only the dream applied to your enemies. The tree, O king, is you. Your greatness has grown and reached to the sky. But because of your pride, you will be driven away from people. You will live with the wild beasts. You will eat grass like an ox and be drenched with the dew of heaven, until you acknowledge that the Most High is sovereign and rules over the kingdoms of men and gives them to anyone he wishes." The warning was clear, a call to repent, to humble himself. But the king's heart was not. The warning was heard, but not heeded. 12 months passed. An entire year of grace was given. One day, as Nebuchadnezzar walked upon the roof of his palace, admiring the splendor of Babylon, the same arrogant, proud words from a year before were on his lips. And while the words were still in his mouth, the voice came from heaven itself. "O King Nebuchadnezzar, to you it is spoken. The royal authority has departed from you." In an instant his mind shattered. The light of reason fled from his eyes. The mighty ruler became like an animal. His hair grew long like eagle's feathers, his nails like a bird's claws. He wandered the fields, consumed by madness, his royal robes traded for the open sky. The greatest king on earth, the architect of wonders, was reduced to crawling in the dust. The throne sat empty, a silent rebuke to the man who thought he was its source of power. For 7 seasons, the madness held him, 7 years of humbling, until one day, stripped of everything, at the very bottom, he lifted his eyes to the heavens. It was not just a glance, it was an act of surrender, an admission of dependence. And in that moment, understanding returned. Sanity dawned like the morning sun. He raised his voice, not in pride, but in praise. "Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and exalt and glorify the King of heaven, because everything he does is right, and all his ways are just. And those who walk in pride, he is able to humble." His sanity was restored. His throne was returned. His counselors and nobles sought him out, but his heart was forever changed. Because no kingdom, no power, no name under the sun stands above the authority of God Most High. Pride falls, but those who humble themselves before the Lord rise again. Babylon's crown passed from king to king, but its heart remained the same, proud, unrepentant, defiant. Decades later, in the twilight of the empire, Belshazzar, Nebuchadnezzar's successor, sat upon the throne. He ruled not with wisdom, which he had not sought, but with arrogance, which he had in abundance. One night, amidst drunken laughter and reckless indulgence, Belshazzar held a great feast. 1,000 nobles gathered. Wine flowed without end, and the air thickened with decadence and blasphemy. But in his pride, the king crossed a line no earthly ruler was meant to cross. He ordered the sacred vessels, the gold and silver cups taken from the temple of Jerusalem by Nebuchadnezzar, to be brought into the hall. These were not mere treasures, they were holy, consecrated to the God of Israel. And with those stolen sacred treasures, he and his guests, his wives and his concubines, drank wine and praised their false gods of gold and silver, of bronze, iron, wood, and stone. It was the ultimate act of contempt. In that moment, the unseen hand of judgment moved. Without warning, a hand appeared, the fingers of a human hand, glowing with an otherworldly fire, writing words upon the plaster wall of the royal palace, in the light of the lampstand. No voice, no sound, only the silent, terrifying stroke of destiny being carved into stone. The laughter died, the music stopped, the king's face turned white with terror, the strength drained from his body. His knees shook and knocked together. His heart melted within him. Panicked, the arrogant king became a terrified child. He cried out for his wise men, but no wise man could read the words. No astrologer could explain the message. Their knowledge was darkness in the face of this divine light. In the midst of the panic, the Queen Mother remembered. She spoke of a man from another time. "There is a man in your kingdom who has the spirit of the holy gods," she said. "There was one man in Babylon who could unravel mysteries, one who carried the wisdom of the Most High. Daniel, an old man now, seasoned, steady, his hair white with age and wisdom. Daniel was brought before the king. Belshazzar promised him riches, royal robes, and the third highest position of power if he could read the writing. But Daniel stood unshaken. He refused the gifts with quiet dignity. You may keep your gifts for yourself and give your rewards to someone else. Nevertheless, I will read the writing for the king. For what is wealth to a man who serves the King of heaven? And with a calm voice, Daniel first reminded the king of Nebuchadnezzar's pride and his humbling. Then he read the words written by the hand of God. Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin, numbered, weighed, divided. Daniel declared the interpretation. Mene, God has numbered the days of your reign and brought it to an end. Tekel, you have been weighed on the scales of divine justice and found disappointed wanting. Peres, Upharsin, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. That very night, the prophecy was fulfilled. While the city partied, the armies of Persia, led by Cyrus, diverted the Euphrates River and slipped beneath the city's gates. The proud king of Babylon was slain, and the golden empire, once thought invincible, the head of gold, was shattered. Because no throne stands forever, no kingdom defies the hand of heaven without facing its reckoning. Daniel, the exile, the prophet, the servant of the living God, stood untouched amidst the fall of empires. But his journey was not yet over, for new kings would rise and new trials would come. Empires rise, empires fall, dust returns to dust. But some names endure across kingdoms, across rulers, across time. Daniel, now an old man who had served kings of two different empires, still stood at the heart of power. Babylon was gone. The Medo-Persian Empire now reigned. Yet Daniel, faithful through every storm, was chosen to serve as one of three administrators under the new king Darius. The new king trusted him above all others. Daniel's wisdom, his integrity, his excellence of spirit set him so far apart that the king planned to set him over the whole kingdom. But with favor came jealousy, and in the dark corners of the court, the other administrators and satraps, consumed by envy, conspired and plotted. They could find no corruption in him, no fault, no weakness, no error in his governance, except for one thing, his unwavering devotion to the God of heaven. And so they devised a trap, using his virtue against him. They proposed a royal decree, unchangeable by the law of the Medes and Persians, that for 30 days no man could pray to any god or person except King Darius. Whoever disobeyed would face death by lions. Daniel heard the decree. He understood the plot. He knew the cost. His life was on the line. And still, he went to his chamber, opened his windows toward Jerusalem, got down on his knees, and prayed, giving thanks to his God, unwavering, just as he had always done, 3 times a day, morning, noon, and night. His voice rose to heaven, not in defiance of the king whom he served faithfully, but in loyalty to the King of Kings. The conspirators, lying in wait, struck. They dragged Daniel before Darius, exposing his prayers. And though the king loved Daniel and was deeply distressed, though he worked until sundown to find a way to save him, the law of the Medes and Persians could not be undone. His own prideful law had become his prison. With a heavy heart, his face filled with anguish, Darius gave the order. Daniel, old, gentle, faithful, was cast into the lion's den. A stone was rolled over the mouth of the den, sealing it. And the king whispered, his voice broken, a prayer of his own to a God he barely knew. May your God, whom you serve continually, deliver you. Night fell. The king spent it in fasting and sleeplessness. The lions prowled in the darkness, powerful, hungry beasts in a sealed pit. But unseen hands moved. The God of heaven, Daniel's God, sent his angel, and the mouths of the lions were shut. They became like lambs at the feet of God's servant. When morning came, at the first light of dawn, Darius ran to the den. His voice echoed in fear and desperate hope. Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you? From within the darkness came the calm, living answer. O king, live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths. They have not harmed me, because I was found innocent in his sight, nor have I ever done any wrong before you, O king. I am unharmed. The stone was rolled away. Daniel emerged untouched, without a single scratch. The lions, fierce and terrible, had not laid a single claw upon him, because he had trusted in his God. And the king decreed to every nation, every tongue, every land, I issue a decree that in every part of my kingdom people must fear and reverence the God of Daniel, for he is the living God, and he endures forever. His kingdom shall never be destroyed, and his dominion will have no end. Daniel prospered under Darius, because when you stand faithful in the den, God stands with you. But far greater visions were yet to come. The mysteries of God were not yet fully unveiled. Visions of beasts, of kingdoms, of the end of days. visions that would carry Daniel into realms beyond the reach of kings. As the years passed, Daniel's role shifted. He had been an interpreter for kings. Now he would be a vessel for God's own visions. Kings came and went. Empires shifted like sand. But God was not finished with his servant. One night, in the depths of his spirit, Daniel was given a vision, not of the present, but of the future. A terrifying, glorious glimpse beyond the veil of time, where the rise and fall of kingdoms unfolded before his eyes. In the vision, the four winds of heaven stirred the great sea of humanity, and from its chaotic depths arose four monstrous beasts, each different from the other, each representing a world power. The first, like a lion, representing Babylon, with the wings of an eagle. The second, like a bear, representing Medo-Persia, raised up on one side, its mouth gripped with devoured flesh, hungry for conquest. The third, like a leopard, representing Greece, swift and fierce, with four wings and four heads, symbolizing its rapid conquest and subsequent division. And the fourth, the most terrifying of them all, a beast without name, without earthly comparison, dreadful, terrifying, and exceedingly strong, devouring and trampling everything beneath its iron feet. It had 10 horns, representing kings, and from them arose another horn, a small, boastful horn, speaking great blasphemies against the Most High, a figure of ultimate human rebellion. Daniel trembled as he watched. His spirit was grieved. Nations would rise, kingdoms would fall, violence, chaos, persecution, darkness covering the earth. But then, through the storm of history, another vision, a scene change from earth to heaven, a throne set in heaven. Thrones were placed, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. His robe was white as snow, his hair like pure wool. His throne was flaming with fire. A river of fire flowed from his presence. Thousands upon thousands ministered before him. 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The court sat, the books were opened, judgment was set, and then, one like a son of man came with the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient of Days and was led into his presence, and to him was given authority, glory, and sovereign power. All nations and peoples and languages worshipped him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion. His kingdom is one that shall never pass away. Daniel's heart was troubled. He was overwhelmed, his face pale with what he had seen. He could scarcely bear the weight of it. The beasts, the kingdoms, the wars, the blasphemies, and yet, beyond it all stood the eternal throne. Above all the chaos, there was a sovereign plan. The vision was sealed in his heart, not for his time alone, but for generations yet to come. Because the story of Daniel is more than survival, more than visions of kings and lions. It is the unveiling of a greater reality, that amidst the storms of history, the chaos of human ambition, the kingdom of God stands unshaken. Empires may rise, empires may fall, but his kingdom endures forever. The years weighed heavy upon Daniel. The once young exile who had stood before kings was now an old man, weary from a long life of faithfulness in a foreign land. But heaven was not yet finished speaking. In the 3rd year of King Cyrus, another vision came to Daniel, one unlike any before, a vision so overwhelming, so vast in scope, that his strength left him completely and his face turned deathly pale. By the banks of the great river Tigris, Daniel lifted his eyes and saw a man clothed in linen, his waist girded with the finest gold, his body like topaz, his face like the appearance of lightning, his eyes like flames of fire, his arms and legs like the gleam of burnished bronze, and the sound of his voice like the sound of a multitude. Daniel alone saw the vision. The men with him did not see it, but a great terror fell upon them, and they fled in terror to hide themselves. His body trembled. He fell face down to the ground in a deep sleep. But the messenger, this glorious being, touched him and strengthened him. Words of prophecy flowed, a torrent of future history, words of wars yet to come, kingdoms colliding, Persia, Greece, rulers rising, rulers falling in a great cosmic struggle, the rise of a ruthless, arrogant king who would desecrate the sanctuary, stop the sacrifices, and exalt himself above all gods, a prophecy of terrible suffering for God's people. And yet, beyond every terror, beyond every conflict, beyond the darkest moments of history, there stood a promise. The time would come when those who sleep in the dust of the earth would awaken, some to everlasting life, some to shame and everlasting contempt, and the wise would shine like the brightness of the heavens, and those who lead many to righteousness, like the stars forever and ever. But Daniel was told, seal the words, shut up the book until the time of the end, for the end was not yet. The vision belonged to days far ahead. Exhausted, bewildered, overwhelmed, Daniel longed to understand. He saw the suffering, the conflict, the long expanse of time. My Lord, how will it all end? He asked. But the answer was gentle, and yet, go your way, Daniel, for the words are sealed and closed up until the time of the end. You will rest, and then at the end of the days you will rise to receive your allotted inheritance. And so the man who had seen kings rise and empires fall, who had faced lions and flames without fear, who had stood before angels and glimpsed the end of the world, was told to rest. His work was done. Daniel's life was not defined by his visions, though they were staggering, nor by the palaces he served in, though they were mighty. It was defined by one thing, from the first test at the king's table to the final, exhausting vision: faithfulness. Through every storm, through every trial, through every unanswered question, Daniel stood firm, and in the end, he was promised what every faithful heart longs for: to rise, to shine, to receive the reward prepared by the hand of God himself. Because kings and empires may pass away into rumor and ruin, but those who stand with the eternal King will never be forgotten. The story of Daniel is not merely the tale of an ancient exile. It is the unveiling of eternal truth, a testimony written across time, a call to faith in a world that bows to shifting thrones. Daniel began as a boy ripped from his homeland, a stranger in a strange land tempted by the power and glory of kings. Yet through every chapter of his life, one thread remained unbroken. He belonged to God. When others compromised, he stood firm. When others feared, he knelt to pray. When the powers of this world threatened his life, he trusted in the unseen hand of heaven, the God who shut the mouths of lions, the God who walks through fire, the God who humbles the proudest kings, the God who lifts kingdoms up and brings them down. Empires may rise in gold, in iron, in conquest, but all the empires of men are part of a statue with feet of clay, destined to fall to dust. Only one kingdom endures, only one king reigns forever. Centuries after Daniel's visions were sealed, the world would see the fulfillment of the stone not cut by human hands, a king born not in a palace but in a stable, a kingdom not built by force but by sacrifice. The Son of Man, of whom Daniel spoke, would come, and his dominion is everlasting. The visions of Daniel still echo. The call remains: be faithful, stand firm, trust the one who holds the times and seasons in his hands. For though the world may tremble, though kingdoms may fall, the name of the Lord endures forever. And those who are wise, those who lead many to righteousness, will shine like the stars forever.